Hi, this is Colton Meir working on my final dev commentary for Ethan Miller and my final project that we're calling Ellipse. So if you haven't seen the game before, you are this ship flying through the galaxy, going from orbit to orbit, trying to sling across, get yourself flying off and head to a new planet. But if you time it incorrectly, just like that, you're going to crash, explode, and the game will be over. So there is a lot of programming that has gone into this game that is conceptual and has to deal with trig and math, and it's a lot to explain. So in this game, I'll give a quick overview of everything that's happening, and in a future video, I will go specifically into how the elliptical orbit works and how the player is slinging from planet to planet. But as for the quick overview, what is happening here is this player, and first of all, I should explain that imagine this game is using three major components. So we have the player character, and we have this planet with the third orbit or component that I'm mentioning being this gravitational sphere, let's call it. So the character on every frame saves its current frame and saves its previous current frame to its last frame. So it knows where it was and it knows where it's going. This is good because we constantly use trig to calculate a player's direction or the angle that's going, so 0, 45, 90, 180, 270, so on. And we also can artificially maintain a velocity depending on how much X or Y or Z values it's moving from frame to frame. It will always tick that same amount, which helps when the elliptical orbit changes velocities constantly the way that theta works. So that's what's happening constantly in the blueprint for the player on event tick. Now on the planet, we have something that I've been calling our orbiter. So if I make that orbiter visible, this orbiter is constantly rotating the planet. It's always there. You can't see it, but it's always there, which is why it's invisible. When the player connects, the orbiter, where are we? When the player connects, the orbiter is going to inherit a major and minor axis and set itself to an eccentricity. Now what does that all mean? What that all means is this equation is the equation for an ellipse. I'm not going to go into it quickly, or in depth, but to quickly go into it, an ellipse has this equation where this is a minor axis, this is a major axis. They're both radii, but they're radii in different directions. So the minor axis is the smaller one, and the major axis is the larger one. A circle has an eccentricity of 0 because a circle is not eccentric, it's normal. Like an eccentric person is crazy. Crazy like an elliptical orbit like this, which would have closer to 1, it might be like 0.98, it wouldn't actually be 1. But that's the idea behind it. So we're setting this eccentricity here based on the semi-minor axis, and the semi-minor axis is calculated when that ship connects. The semi-minor axis would have been right there where it connected when it's perpendicular. If we get something that's, if I can shoot at the right, so if we get something that's further outside, it's going to have a larger minor axis, which makes the orbit less eccentric, which means that's going to be more circular. Okay, so that's constantly happening. There's my loss. You can see me fail on screen. And now, once the game knows that it's setting a certain orbital path, finally we can go back to the very beginning of all this code, set the player in orbit to true. When the player is in orbit is true, now the player is going to get the location of that orbiter that we showed right here. Oh, I set it to invisible, but remember that black ball that was spinning? That black ball is now going to get all of these variables, the minor axis, major axis, and eccentricity, and it's going to, where am I? I'm in the wrong blueprint, that would be why. It's going to set the player in orbit to true, and then finally the player is going to get the location of that orbiter. Now, lastly, the player has to eject itself to go to the next planet. A planet is added off screen in a for loop, and the previous planet, once that planet is off the player's screen, is going to be destroyed behind over here. And the points are going to keep ticking, and that for loop is going to spawn a new planet. So you can imagine planet behind is now destroyed, you can't see it, and the planet in front is spawned so that when I go to this planet, you can see that one over to the right. Okay, so that's essentially the major functionality, very broad overview of everything that's going on here in a nutshell. I will be going more in depth in how the elliptical orbit is working and how the player is connecting in the next video. So thank you for listening. This is Colton Meir with my final dev commentary.